Hello, this is Allison Demars, and today I'm going to be going over my sheep brain dissection for Anatomy and Physiology 220 online lab. So looking at the brain as a whole, we're going to start on the outside. There are several different layers of protection that our brain has. The outermost one is called the dura mater, which is made up of different connective tissue. And then the middle layer is called the arachnoid matter, which surrounds the brain and the spinal cord. And then the innermost layer is called the pia mater. Now that we have gone through the layers of protection, we can look at the brain itself. We're going to start by looking here at the cerebrum, more specifically the outside, which is called the cortex. Here we can see the hills or the folds. That's like this upper part right here. That is known as the gyri. I think I pronounced that right. And then the valleys or the grooves, which is this darker part right here, that is called the succulus. And then overall, the cerebrum is divided into two hemispheres right there along the longitudinal fissure. And that is held together by the corpus callosum, which is a band of nervous tissue that we'll take a look at later, and it's like a little bit deep. So now that we looked at that, the cerebrum can also be broken down into 4 different sections. The side up here, the anterior side, is the frontal lobe, which is in charge of motor function, and then moving back dorsally would be the parietal lobe, which receives and processes sensory information. And then moving inferiorly down here would be the temporal lobe, which is in charge of receiving and processing sound. And then the most dorsal section is the occipital lobe. I always mispronounce that, so sorry about that. And that's in charge of vision. So then moving back, we can see the cerebellum, which is right there. And that controls our balance and our muscle coordination. Coordination. There we go. It's a hard day. And that is divided at the vermis. And then lastly is the spinal cord right here, and that sends sensory information from the body to the brain. So now that we have taken a look at the outside, we're actually going to flip it over to get this more ventral view. And it is noted that there are 12 different cranial nerves that send electrical signals. However, they were cut for the dissection. But luckily we can still see the olfactory bulb if we move up here anteriorly, which holds the olfactory nerves. And then there's supposed to be like an X-shaped section and that is the optic chiasma, and that is where the optic nerves cross, and it's supposed to be like an X. So flipping it back over and cutting it down that corpus callosum, we can see the inside of the brain. There are 4 different ventricles that each have the choroid plexus, which helps create the cerebral spinal fluid. Ventricles 1 and 2 are made up of are known as the lateral ventricles, and these are filled with the cerebrospinal fluid. And then below the lateral ventricle is the hippocampus. And then the hippocampus helps decipher different emotions, which also aids in converting the short-term memory to long-term memory. Then there is the 3rd ventricle and the 4th ventricle, which is separated by the cerebral aqueduct, which holds the cerebrospinal fluid. So in addition to those 4 different ventricles, there are also different sections, the cerebrum as mentioned earlier. And then the next notable one is the discephalon, which has the thalamus, which should be like right here-ish. And the thalamus is important for sensory communication center and controls where the electrical impulses are sent, that they're sent to the correct area. Moving inferiorly, down here should be the hypothalamus, which is in charge of the internal homeostasis, and then there is the penile body, which is also an important endocrine gland and produces melatonin, and that should be, yeah. Lastly is the hypothesis, which is like, it should be somewhere in here. It's really hard. My brain's like kind of squished. And that is also known as the pituitary gland, which controls the endocrine glands. Then there is the brain stem right here, which consists of the midbrain, and then the pons, which are a little bit back further, and then that connects to the cerebellum, to the different sections of the brain via the spinal cord. And then lastly is the medulla, which should be like, it's like midway, kind of right there. The medulla is extremely important to support the bodily functions and reflexes. Then we're back to the cerebellum and then the spinal cord. So lastly, if you cut the cortex, which is why this section is missing right here, you can see the gray and the white matter. The gray matter is, it's not that, oh, here's a better one. The gray matter is right there. It's on the outside and is made of cell bodies, dendrites, and unmelanated, I never can pronounce this word, and I've Googled it 5,000 times. Unmelanated axons, and then the white matter right there is made up from the myelinated axons. Thank you.